Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome to our first episode in season 4 of our debut Spotlight series, where we shine the light on the freshest authors and their work. Today we are shining that light on Nathan Newman and their debut novel, How to Leave the House. Set over a day in the life of Nat West, about to leave his hometown at the age of 23 to university. His final mission is in search of an embarrassing missing package. This is a hilarious and brilliantly inventive novel about connection, identity and belonging from a truly exciting new voice. Nathan Newman is a writer and filmmaker based in London. They studied creative writing at NYU, where they were mentored by Zadie Smith, and their short stories have won awards, including the James Knudsen Prize for Fiction. Nathan has been published in literary journals in the US and several university anthologies in the UK. As well as writing, they also work as an usher at a cinema. How to Leave the House is their debut novel and will be published by Abacus in the UK tomorrow and by Viking Penguin in the US in August. We're so pleased to be joined by Nathan. Welcome to A Pair of Bookends.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm really good.
How are you feeling? We are actually recording this a couple of weeks before your debut novel is going to be out in the world. So how are you feeling about that?
I'm good. Yeah, nervous. Obsessively refreshing Goodreads, which has helped and I've seen a few book vloggers making videos about my book and stuff, and it's just quite bizarre seeing people talk about it when I'm
Yeah,
like,
I can imagine. I mean, you've got this incredible book trailer on your website, which I was watching last night and I'm completely obsessed with. I think it is probably one of the best book trailers I've seen. And you got a lot of honest reviews on there from lots of people who were all saying great things. They were not anybody that you knew, were they? They were just random people off the
they're all
street.
complete random strangers, and that
Yeah,
was their complete and honest opinion, and I had no influence over it at all.
right. That's great. So we've got lots of people that think your novel is brilliant, and I am one of those people. I absolutely loved it, and I completely hoovered it up. Now, before we dive into your book, I have to start because it's a debut spotlight episode. I need to ask about your journey to having your debut novel published. When did this journey start for you?
Well, I think I started off basically my last year of university, lockdown happened, and it was one of those things the whole time when I was at uni, I was thinking, well, I really want to be a writer, but I couldn't find the time. Of course I had the time, but when lockdown happened, it was very much like, well, if you don't write a novel in this period, then you can't really call yourself a writer. So I started writing the book, and in the meantime, I applied for a kind of Zoom semester at NYU, just one semester. Not really, it wasn't the official NYU, it was like NYU in Paris, which is like a little offshoot.
Incredible.
And I did my semester, and I was assigned Zadie Smith, and she kind of helped me edit the book. I basically every week I would kind of zoom in with her, give her a new chapter, she would give feedback, and that process pretty much by the end of that semester I had most of the novel. And then yeah, and then she kind of was just like, you don't really need to be here anymore, which I agreed with. And yeah, I dropped out, and then it was like a tough year trying to find an agent, which is definitely like the hardest process, I think, for a lot of debut, just for a lot of people who want to get into the creative industries, film, TV,
Mhm.
because it really is who you know. And I just had to email lots and lots of people for about 9 months. I was just sending emails out to every agent in the UK and US. And then eventually one of them, Charlie, my agent now, took me on. And then it was very quickly, we just kind of touched up the book a little bit and sent it out. And then I got a book deal. And then
Incredible.
it's 2 years to publication. So it all feels like quite a long time ago now.
So this was actually finished 2 years ago.
Book was finished in 2021, I think.
Wow.
So it's been a while, and I've there's a lot like a little bit of an embarrassment around it because I'm like, oh God, that odd thing, you know.
Oh no. So how old were you when you finished this?
23 when I finished it.
That is unreal. It makes a lot of sense actually that you were mentored by Zadie Smith because I think her first novel was published when she was 23, I want to say, but I could be wrong. But it honestly just blows my mind. Like, I don't think I could have produced anything as ambitious and inventive as that at the age of 23. Now, I wanted to ask about Zadie Smith in particular because I always take so much from the interviews that she gives, and I think she's such an intelligent being. And I can't imagine what the experience must have been like in having her teach you. What influence do you feel that she's had on your writing?
I mean, Zadie changed my life probably like twice, once as a reader and then as a teacher. And I think reading her, I picked up one of her books. I think I was like 18 or something, and I was white teeth, and it just kind of blew me away. And it was a very particular kind of voice that, I think I've spent a lot of writing this first book emulating in a way, and maybe to the book's detriment, I'm not sure. And I love her sense of humor. I think like basically that's the main thing which I took from reading her sense of humor, just like the pure empathy that's shot through. Her books are like little empathy machines that just keep churning out, like, in my opinion, in the lamest way possible, just love for these characters, who I all love and who I remember, like they're real people, which is maybe the true test of a book. Now, particularly, I love her first two novels, White Teeth and The Autograph Man. Love her other stuff as well, but I think those books, because they're young people's novels anyway. They're novels. There's so much fun in them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're written by a young person. I think that energy, that kineticism, was something which I really wanted to capture when I was writing this book. But I wanted to do it, in less pages, basically, rather than doing like a 500-page book. I wanted to try doing it in 300.
I feel like you can definitely see the parallels between your writing and Zadie's writing.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I was listening to an old episode of the podcast Literary Friction, and it was an episode that they had with Zadie when they were publishing Grand Union, which was a collection of short stories?
Yeah.
They were interviewing her about that collection, and they were asking her about writing these collective voices, which is obviously what you do in this book. You write from a variety of perspectives, and it's also kind of sharply observed about the intricate details of these people's lives and how they're all sort of connected in these little ways. And so you can certainly see like the parallels there. I've just realised, and I am going to get a lot of annoyed listeners, that I actually didn't start off by asking what you're currently reading. So I actually need to rewind and ask you what you're currently reading.
I'm reading Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence, which is, I'm having like a slightly belated D.H. Lawrence phase at the moment, and yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Do you read classics quite a lot, or is this just something that you're starting at the moment?
Yeah, I read mostly dead authors at the moment. Like I like my corpses.
I respect that.
Dead authors at the moment. But I do read contemporary fiction every now and then when a book takes my fancy. But yeah, working through D.H. Lawrence at the moment, and I might get flamed, but I'm not a fan. I think
You're not a fan.
I read Lady Chatterley's Lover when I was like 16 because it was meant to be all like a hot, sexy, naughty book that children shouldn't read.
It's not.
And it's not. Well, I remember being like, oh wow, this is so tame. And so just going back to it, and I'm kind of enjoying, so good with character, but man, he repeats so much. Everything is so repetitive, and it just does that thing of like far too much description, which is maybe like the curse of, I think, a certain kind of writing that was made obsolete by photography basically and video. And I feel like his work, some gorgeous sentences and description, but also how many times you're going to describe a coal mine, like. You know what I mean? You can kind of just say coal mine now, and you know what he means.
And we're over it.
Yeah, and it goes on and on and on. But I am not to shit on it too much. I am enjoying it.
Well, I respect that because I have such a fear of the classics and have left it quite late to read a lot of classic books because I'm so scared that they're going to make me feel stupid or I'm going to find them like too dense. I only read Mrs. Dalloway for the first time like a month ago, and I just find them so daunting. Like, how big is that book that you're reading?
It's big. It's way too big. I mean, I've got like some tiny print edition and it's 400 pages, so I'm sure it's probably like 700 pages in regular print.
Are
And
you
you know
somebody
what?
that doesn't finish books when you don't like them?
The most annoying thing for me is that I can't not finish a book.
I'm like that.
And if I don't like a book, then I'm just like makes the reading like pure drudgery. But I just I have like some sort of OCD about it that I just can't. I have to finish the book. I have to finish the book.
I'm exactly the same and I hate it.
Yeah, it's annoying. But then I do like at the end of the day I can look at the books in my bookshelf and be like, oh, I read all of those.
Yeah.
Which does me. What do you think about Mrs. Dalloway?
So I it's probably controversial, but I didn't love it. I found a lot of things interesting about it, but I found it really hard to keep up with in this sense that, and I think it's incredible that she manages to do this, but for me it was too much as a reader, the fact that in one sentence you can be in one character's brain and then by the end of that sentence you're like in another character's brain, and I was like, where am I, what is going on? So I found that quite like chaotic, and I love that for her. I love that she did that, but for me it was, there was too much going on and I really struggled with it. So I think, yeah, there was some interesting things about it, but for me it was, there was too much going on.
Yeah, so fair. So,
Are
yeah,
you a fan?
I do love Mrs. Dalloway.
You're just like,
But
you stupid piss.
no, I like it's a difficult read, and I remember I tried to read it and I gave up a couple times. I do understand your pain quite a lot. So
Yes, it's
it,
hard.
it is fortunately it is a great book. I'm
It,
sorry.
it is like, it's incredible that she manages to do that. But yeah, for me, I was just, yeah, I just got lost and I felt really stupid. So that's why I am always reluctant to go back and read classics that I've not read, because I'm just scared of being made to feel stupid, which is quite a lot. Now, onto your book, How to Leave the House. It is set in a 24-hour period, which is also similar to Mrs. Dalloway. It feels, to me, that feels more ambitious and daunting than having like years and years to play with. Where did the inspiration for this book start for you?
I think there's an original version of this book in my mind that was much bigger and much more. It was about, might reuse this idea, but it was about warring companies, like a big corporate novel about an American company, an American exercise company that own like a few spas, like exercise and gyms and stuff, and they're trying to take over a smaller company in the UK. And NatWest is like the Hamlet-esque heir to this company, basically. And it was like this insane Pinchonian novel of intrigue and conspiracy, and I couldn't write it. It was way too big. And then I just kind of was just like, let's just make it smaller, set it all in one day. And then the package was, I had something kind of similar happen to me in a very loose sense. It didn't send me on some, epic journey around my town, much more me kind of stomping around my flat trying to find this package and then waking up the neighbors at 2 a.m. because I really needed this package. But other than that, that was really the impetus, I think. It was almost like well, I knew I wanted to make a smaller novel. I mean, it's still quite ambitious. There's lots of different
Hmm.
perspectives on, but I wanted to make it just like kind of confine it to a time frame because then I knew I'd finish it, I think. And then that kind of like works with the form of it.
Yeah,
And it kind of feels like it's speeding up and it kind of has that, I don't know, TikTok effect. I've been calling it TikTok Middlemarch in my head for a while. And I think it does kind of, all the pieces of society just push together into that one small time frame.
totally. Yeah. And I mentioned before about me listening to the episode of Literary Friction where they were speaking to Zadie Smith about Grand Union, I said they were asking her about experimenting with a collective voice. And I wanted to ask you about that because I really loved how playful that the book is, and how you sort of toy with the idea of like main character energy, which is what NatWest has, not kind of realizing that whilst he believes he's the protagonist of his story, and in a sense he is, he's actually just kind of scratching the surface of multiple people's lives around him. Sorry, I should say that every other chapter of this book we dive into another character's perspective. But why did you want to experiment with a variety of voices, and how did you go about making sort of each character their own unique individual?
So in terms of writing other people, I think it was partially because as you'll read the book, Nat West is a difficult character. Some people love staying in his head. I found it difficult because he's quite annoying, but that's part of his charm, I think, totally. And interestingly, Americans love him. They don't see the annoyingness, whereas
No.
all English people I speak to, they're already irritated. But I think so. There's like just a desire just to jump out of that for a little bit and give it a bit of breathing room. But I mean, the structure was designed from the beginning, and I thought I really wanted, I do think, I wanted, this was going to be my debut, and I kind of knew that as I started writing it, that it was either this or nothing. I wanted it to be much bigger than debuts usually are.
Mhm.
Debuts tend to be two or three characters falling in love, by a river river or something, and which is like a very well-trod form. But I wanted there to feel like a whole world in 300 pages and not make it, some sort of thing that balloons in size and you can't really keep a hold of, just kind of keep it down, all this character, all this energy bursting in one book, and kind of to flex that, I can do this. I can do an 80-year-old character, a 15-year-old character, a 60-year-old, a 30-year-old, whatever, and of all different kind of backgrounds, and just keep it. Yeah, and I think it was also just an energy thing, kind of making it feel like maybe that's like the Zadie Smith of it all is, her first book has that energy of just all these different perspectives who you're kind of frolicking through. That's kind of the energy that I wanted for this book, and the vibe. I think I was just desperate not to make it feel small, like a debut. I didn't want it to feel like a debut, but I wanted to have the energy of a debut, I suppose.
I get that. It does have the energy of a debut. Like I said in my intro, you are a really exciting new voice in fiction, and I think you can sense the influences that you've had in your work, but it definitely feels like something fresh at the same time. It is a really ambitious thing that you've created here. And I did want to ask actually about, because you have a variety of ages, like you've said, of your characters. And, there's a lot of sort of political discourse about like the generational divide and all that kind of stuff. Is that something that you wanted to explore in the book?
I think when I was 23, I did, and now I'm slightly wary of generational labels in general because I think
Yeah,
they're kind of used by advertisers to divide people.
yeah,
That's basically where they came from and what they're for. But I do like this kind of process of putting, all these different age groups up against each other and seeing what happens, because that's what life is like. You walk down the
yeah,
street, it's not just like a load of 23-year-olds, walking down the street. It's
yeah,
like it's everyone in the world, or everyone in the town. So I like that it was kind of inevitable. There's no other way to write it really, other than have other ages. Otherwise, it would have been some sort of very strange kind of French novel about like NatWest moving back the same as him, and everyone is just the same, and it kind of doubles and triples. And so it was really, the form demanded the amount of perspectives that it has, I
of
think.
course, yeah. And where did the name Nat West come from? Because I just think that was so funny. The second I read that, I was like, what is going on?
I was just very tactful, and I wanted to get all that free advertising from everyone just seeing NatWest Banks around. And no, it was. I liked the play. I think when I set out writing it, and a small part of me regrets this now, I liked the playfulness of kind of suggesting that it is the author, because the author has a very similar name, kind of suggesting that this is going to be a kind of auto-fictional novel. This is going to be, me writing about my very limited experiences, and that I am this character and this person who says sometimes quite annoying or outrageous things. That the playfulness of having you feel like the author, this is the author's self-insert, the character energy kind of thing, but also distancing it as well. And then also this kind of, I think it's just a funny joke, basically.
It's so
And there's
good.
a long history, I think, in English novels, British novels, but English novels, particularly about, city names. Like I just think that's a tradition which should be upheld. It's like,
Totally.
otherwise it's the character is called Sam or something. It's not great.
No, Nat
Well,
West
no,
is a very memorable character. I did say before that I found there to be so many sharp and witty observations of the characters throughout, and I did wonder when I read that you also work as an usher at a cinema. Do you think those kind of observations of people have stemmed from that, or have you always just naturally had that kind of, have you always just observed people in this way?
that is a good question. That's interesting. Almost certainly. It's just, it's more a part of the reason why I love that job is because, your job when you're in hospitality is basically to listen and then to get people coffee. Like that's pretty much what you do, or clean up or do popcorn, and but just that kind of, it really is all about, the customer is always right and all that kind of stuff. By the way, the customer is always right was that adage was definitely made up by a customer.
100%.
Like, it's such bullshit. So I think that's definitely that element to it. Also, yeah, I think that's quite natural. I think that's quite natural with writers, is you just kind of walk down the street and kind of imagine other people's lives and what's going on in their heads
Mhm.
and how they might react in certain situations. But then I don't find it so difficult, because fundamentally, if I've had a thought, then I think someone else has had the same thought. I'm not really unique in that sense. And so I don't think there's too much difference really, or at least we shouldn't be acting as if there is so much difference between what I think and what someone else thinks. Like someone would have had that thought, and so I never felt it was never too much of a stretch to imagine other people's lives, I guess.
No, I get that. But I do think that, like, I worked in hospitality for over a decade, and I definitely feel like it heightened my sort of sense of people, and I noticed a lot more about people that I wouldn't, that my family wouldn't notice things about people in the way that I kind of would, because you've got so many of these small interactions that you're doing all day, every day. And I think you can really tell a lot about a person by the way they're treating somebody that's sort of like serving them. So yeah, I definitely got a sense of that, and that's what made me curious about whether it was that work that sort of influenced these observations.
When you walk in, when you're working and someone walks in, you kind of know how the interaction is going to go
Oh,
immediately.
100%.
Learn this weird like extra sense of like, okay, well, this is how this is going to go. You
Hmm.
just know it's going to be like a problem basically. And you also, like, I think in hospitality you see people at their worst as well. You see
Hmm.
them when they're just like screaming, angry, totally frustrated, being annoyed about the stupidest things
Yeah.
for no reason, and also knowing that, well, they probably had a bad day if that's
Yeah.
happened, kind of like going the extra mile on that thought, but still being frustrated at someone's behavior, and so on. So I think there is definitely like you make very quick judgments about people.
But it
That's
also makes you a much more empathetic person,
Yeah, I think
because
so.
I don't think you'd be able to do the job if you weren't, because you just get fired for shouting back at people. Now, you said before, and your book has been described as Middlemarch for the TikTok generation, which I'm completely obsessed with that description. And you really do explore what human connection actually looks like in a time when so much of our lives are kind of spent online. And you include pages that are dedicated to teenagers texting, and we have NatWest and his teacher on various dating apps. We also have pages that are dedicated to posts on online forums. There's lots about what it looks like online. I think we see life online represented in a mostly negative way in other forms that I've read or kind of watched. But with this, it felt like a fairly balanced stance on what life looks like online. Was it your intention to kind of approach it in that way? Or did that come out quite organically?
I think it's much more organic. I think when you grow up online, I mean, it's just like any other aspect of life. Like
Yeah.
there are positives and negatives. Like I almost certainly wouldn't have been a writer, I don't think, if I hadn't had access to the internet at a very young age, because that's where I did all my first reading, was just from, basically pirating books. I'm not allowed to say that. No one's allowed to pirate my book, but like that's what I was doing when I was a kid. And
I didn't even know you could do that.
and also like watching films and all this stuff that, it boggles my mind when I think about people in like the 70s or something who had the only time they'd ever be able to see a film is if it was showing in the cinema. Like they would just have
Hmm.
to go to the cinema at that one time to see it. And if it was a re-release or something of something, and if not, they'll never see that film until like 20 years later when it shows again in that cinema. Whereas I just had like total access to art like total access to art, incredible, and I think made me who I am. But also, a whole lot of problems on the internet. I don't know if you've heard, but like it can be a dangerous place. And I think just kind of accurately trying to speak through that voice, like the voice of the internet, certainly in that particular chapter, which you're talking about with the forum posts and so on,
Hmm.
what that looks like. And I mean, that's a very extreme part of the internet,
Of course, yeah.
that forum, but not that extreme. And I think it just is what it is. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like it's much more organic. Like there are positives and negatives.
Completely. Now, I don't feel like we can speak about this book without talking about the fact that it is quite a sexy book. What is
Spicy.
it? Spicy. We love a bit of spice. What is it like to write those moments?
One day I'm gonna have to write a sex scene very sincerely, and I'm dreading it. But I think basically I use them as like comic set pieces. I think. I mean, which I think in some sex scenes, if you heard that and then read them, you'd be like, what the fuck is this person talking about? Um, my head, at least, they have like a kind of there's always a punchline to like how bodies are moving or something on the page. And mostly the sex scenes are like not particularly fun or sexy, I hope. Well, I mean, there is I'm gonna leave that up to the reader maybe. But there's a kind of, I certainly think that there's a lot of comedy in sex, particularly between English people, so much fumbling and there's a lot of embarrassment,
Yeah.
especially young people. And kind of just like portraying that is always quite funny. I'm terrified of that, the bad sex award. There's like a writing award or something for the worst sex scene. That was kind of like, I think every writer should have that in their head when they start writing. And if you aim for it,
Yeah.
you don't get it like that, and that's how you aim to write. It's just like aim to write a bad sex scene, and it'll probably read quite well. It's just when you do it really sincerely, and that's probably when it comes off.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to read your very sincere sex scene in the future. But yeah, I love that sex is sort of a kind of source in books and things for comedy, because it really is, like, especially for British people, like, we're just so awkward and embarrassed by sex. And I feel like I'm speaking for everybody, but I feel like British people in particular are just really awkward about that sort of thing. But I thought you wrote it so well. And there is a scene later on in the book, and just the descriptions are just so visceral. And I was actively cringing.
Right near the end of the book.
Yeah.
That was
And it was sort of the kind of like grossness of it,
yeah,
of what NatWest was having to go. Can I say that? Can I say what NatWest was going through? I can say that, can't I?
go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've not gone into detail about it, but it is what NatWest has gone through. And yeah, it had me actively cringing, because you just sort of think about those experiences, and it just yeah, it made my skin hurt kind of reading it. But I think that's a talent as an author, being able to sort of create that kind of feeling for your readers. So lastly, I want to ask, is it true that your book is being adapted?
Yes, into a TV show. It is.
And
It's super
how involved in the process are you?
very. I'm writing all the episodes,
Oh my
creating the
gosh.
writing all the episodes, or have written most of the episodes at this point, and will continue to write the rest of them, and executive producing as well.
Wow.
Extremely exciting. It's with a really good team. It's with people who made Chernobyl and True Detective. So
Incredible.
they're kind of on a hot streak. So I'm hoping my show doesn't end that hot streak.
It definitely won't. I think this book actually really lends itself well to an
Yeah.
episodic kind of form. So I'm really excited to see that. I'm guessing that you can't say anything else about it. When do you know that when we can look forward to it, or is it just it's coming soon?
I would say we have a director, and we are going out to networks right now. Like we're speaking to networks right now about it. So we're not sure where it's landing, what where you'll be able to find it, but we'll probably find out very soon,
Very
hopefully.
exciting. I can't wait to get to watch this. Yeah, I can't imagine how incredible that must feel, that you've written your debut novel and it's been adapted, and you're exec producing and writing the script for it. Like, that's insane. That is and you're an incredible person for us to kind of kick off the debut spotlight series with. I mean, I hope that the other debut authors kind of listening and working on their first book aren't going to all expect the same sort of reception. But I think it's incredible that you have got that. And I think it's so well deserved, because this book is so ambitious and it's so hilarious and inventive and original, and just, yeah, a really great book. So I really hope that our listeners will be buying themselves a copy. And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see what you do next.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, I have to end the episode by asking for a recommendation. So what have you got for us today?
Recommendation.
Yes, can be
Uh,
anything. Books, TV, film, podcasts, anything.
Oh, books or TV or film. Oh, I'm just watching. I mean, this is a slightly null recommendation because I think everyone's going to be watching it. But Baby Reindeer
Oh my
on
gosh,
Netflix. It's like,
don't.
I mean, the reason why I look probably really tired is because I was up till 5 a.m. I just couldn't stop watching. I was just like, okay, go on, I'll
Understandable.
do the
It's
next
so
one.
intense.
Just really smart and
Yeah,
clever and devastating.
yeah,
I just watched this episode 4 was completely
yeah.
devastating.
Brutal.
Yeah,
It,
but I would say
I'm actually blown away by the fact that he's managed to kind of, and I know that like a lot of writers and as for actors as well, from my experience, that there are elements of kind of using what you've experienced, and you know, that sometimes means revisiting kind of old traumas and stuff. But this is like an intense level of like trauma that he's experienced. So to kind of have to go through that, not only writing the play and then adapting it for screen, but also acting in it as well. Like it just seems sort of incredible that he's managed to do that.
yeah, I mean, I feel for him a lot. It's kind
Yeah.
of traumatizing that's happening over and over again.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't have been fun to make, or maybe it was, and maybe it was completely cathartic. I don't know. But yeah, I just think it's really smart and really honest, like incredibly honest about him and how he felt at times during his life, and about, kind of his almost complicity in his own abuse, and like the tragedy and horror of that is that, because he's just such a people, at least in the show, at least because he's such a people pleaser, Donnie's such a people pleaser. It's like he gets dragged further and further into this relationship with the stalker. Yeah, I just think it's very kind of clear-eyed and devastating. So that's
I'm
my recommendation.
so pleased that you've recommended that because I can't stop thinking about it. We finished it not last night, the night before, and yeah, I've just been thinking about it and reading about it, and I think it's just one of the like best things I've seen in a while. So yeah, I would also recommend that everybody go and watch that. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me on A Pair of Bookends today. And for our listeners, please go and buy yourselves a copy of How to Leave the House. It is out tomorrow in the UK. Yep, it is out tomorrow in the UK. Nathan is currently holding a copy of it up, and it's out in the UK tomorrow, and it is out in the US, I believe, in August.
Yeah, August 13th.
Very exciting. And where can our listeners find you on social media? Are you online?
Yeah, I am. You can go on my Instagram, which is Nathan L. Newman. I think that's my handle. Just look up Nathan Newman in
We'll pop a
Instagram.
link in the show notes. It's all good. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so we can reach more of you. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. And that is all we've got time for. So, Nathan, thank you so much once again. It was such a joy chatting to you today. And goodbye.
See you later.